Here I am, Surf Expo, January 2026, with one of the most charismatic, interesting, story beyond belief, and I like to call him groovy. We have Greg Mesanko from New Jersey. And what town are you living in right now? Is it the same you grew up in?
No, I'm living in Toms River, about 7 miles off the beach. And so it's all good.
It's
tough moving off the beach, but I'm okay right now.
Okay, you're okay with it.
That doesn't mean I'll be there forever. You never know.
Okay. The goal is to get back to some sand in your toes.
That's right.
So I'd like to start every interview with your first surfing experience and how that developed.
Well, my brother and I were using these canvas mats that we used to blow up. I don't know if you remember the mats back then.
I was my first experience as well.
And so we were blowing them up, and we were kneeling on them, and then we were trying to stand on them. And all of a sudden, surfboards arrived right around the same time. So we tried out some surfboards, and we liked it. We had primitive wetsuits. I mean, like dive suits with pants and buckles and
beaver tails.
Beaver tails, they were. But it didn't really bother us that much. We loved the sport and so much that we wore my father's dive suits, and we happened to be privileged because my parents bought a home right on the beach. Our backyard was the sand. Our backyard was the ocean, and so we just didn't go out for high school sports. We went out for surfing.
What year was this?
That was 1963.
63. You started in, how old were you?
I was 13.
13. And how long did it take till you got the bug? It bit you.
When I saw the Endless Summer movie, my mother was from New York City, so she let us go up on the train or bus or whatever we did, my brother and I. We went to the Kips Bay Theater in downtown Manhattan, saw the Endless Summer, and it just clicked like that. And we just started running. My parents let me go to Puerto Rico a couple of years later by ourselves on the midnight flight. We got off the plane. We couldn't speak Spanish. We didn't even know where a rincon was. All we said is rincon, rincon. We stuck the boards in the back of the taxi cab, and we drove up to rincon. And when we woke up in the morning, the waves were perfect, and we said, "This is for us."
And you were probably 16 at this point in time?
I was 16, my brother was 14.
And you went by yourselves, unchaperoned.
Unchaperoned.
With no Spanish.
No Spanish. It was amazing.
And how did that develop in Puerto Rico? What experiences did you have with that first trip?
Well, I lived there was a guy on Bummer Hill called Smiley, and his mother lived further up the hill, near where Mr. Dora has a house now on Bummer Hill, and we would walk down. I'm sorry. He's telling me to take my pill.
Okay, well, we don't want to miss medication. Meds are important. At our age, you got to take your meds sometimes.
I took it already.
Okay.
So up the hill with Mamacita, his mother, we would stay at Mamacita's house. And we'd walk down to Domes and walk back. We had no cars at the time because we were only young. And walking up Bummer Hill was tough in the sun after surfing for Domes. When there was nobody out at Domes, now mind you, there was nobody out at Domes. It was just Maria's and Domes and Antonio's. And she would cook us lunch and rice and chicken. But one day I walked down the trail and there was these little legs. And I said, "What is this? What are you feeding me?" She goes, "Oh, I've been feeding you pigeon for a month." And I was eating pigeon and rice. That was some of my experience.
There you go. That's a Puerto Rican experience. So let's transition into getting into business, into the surf industry. What was your timeline on that?
Well, I worked for this guy named Joe Simo, a custom surf shop. And he realized that I was a good surfer, so he bought me a van, and we drove around with his surfboards to every single break around, let people try the boards, and then we'd bring them back and we'd sell them the boards. So
Marianne, give me a tough one.
Simo was a character and a half because sometimes we would bring the boards back and he would yelling at the customer, telling them to get out of here. So we realized that this was going nowhere. And eventually I went to my father after I had gone to college in Cocoa Beach, that what I wanted to really do was open up my first store. And I opened up my first store thanks to Gary Proper, mostly Gary Proper. And I opened up with O'Neill Wetsuits, Canvas by Caton, and Birdwell's in Orly Beach. And that store, believe it or not, was called The Natural Art, long before Natural Art Surfboard.
BT, I'm rolling.
I got the name from the Natural Art movie that was in California. So that only lasted 1 year, and I got in some trouble. My father said, "You're done with that." And then I opened up Grog's about 6 months later. And that was 1970.
1970, you open up Grog. How did you come by the name Grog?
It's not a really good story, but I'll tell you anyway. It's a boring story. But I was in chemistry class, and I was cooking up some 300-degree temperature solution, and the vial spilled over, burned my thumb down to the bone. And of course, I'm screaming throughout school. Everybody's hearing me. Somebody said, "That's Grog the chemist," as opposed to Greg the chemist. It was Grog the chemist. The chemist was dropped, and Grog was my nickname. And so I named the store Grog. And that's simple.
There you go. And the rest is history.
That's right.
And you were, so in that time period, you're really the very beginning of the surf shop business on the East Coast.
You're right. There was Katri, and there was Katri. He was one of my mentors, but it was you got to give the credit to Ron John. That's who when we went to college in Cocoa Beach, I lived in Wakula Apartments, and I'd walk over to Ron John every day to see what he was doing. And he was doing unique things. And he not only selling surfboards, but he was selling fry boots, and the combination of things that he was selling together. And his store was small at that time. I mean, like real small. I mean, 1,000 square foot. But he was onto something at that time. So there was a movement in Cocoa Beach at that time that was unheard of. The surfers in Cocoa Beach, that's one of the reasons I went to college down there, is to be around surfers, to tell you the truth. Whether it was Gary Proper, or Mike Tabling, or Claude Godgins, and the host of people that were down there at the inlet. That's one of the reasons I went to college. So I was able to open up with those three brands, O'Neill Wetsuits, Birdwell, and Caton, and it just started to take off. There was no other companies at the time. It was surfboards, wetsuits, and two companies. That was it. But the crowd started to come, and we were onto some movement. I didn't realize that at the time. There were a lot of people that wanted to be a part of this surf thing, and they came in the store, and it just started to evolve. And then more companies came, and then OP came, and
OP changed a lot.
OP changed.
For the shop, right?
They had one SKU. Now, remember back then, I didn't even have hangers. So we would take the OP shorts and we'd just stack them on a table, like color by size, And people would just come in and buy them like crazy. They were shorts. Talk about short. They were short at that time, in corduroy.
They're not hanging short.
You said it, I didn't.
I had a pairs because I had a surf shop, worked at a shop in Jupiter. And when the first cord shorts came out, I had to have one of every color. And I'm very well acquainted with the nut hangers. But tell me, how did you learn your business acumen? Because apparently you didn't study that in school.
No, I sure didn't study in school. And I'm sorry, Mom, but sending me to Brevard Junior College didn't really do that good. What I learned was on the streets of Cocoa Beach. But the selling points and it came from my blood. I think it came from my my father's side, the Hungarian, Romanian side of the gypsy that's probably in my blood. And I was a good talker. I learned to talk also as a barker on the boardwalk of Seaside Heights in the Wheels of Chance, calling people over to either play the water balloon racing game or put their money on cigarette throws or Skillo at night. So I had a good voice, and it was deep enough, I guess, even back then, that it was a selling point. But people would come in the store, and I would be honest with them. I would tell them what I thought of the board, and they trusted me. And a lot of these customers didn't have much money, so I would give them credit, which I learned from my father as well. We had a yellow pad, and I would say, listen, take the board, pay me $25 a week, you get to use it, just tell everybody where you bought it. And at that time, there was no radio or...
That was your form of advertising.
That was my form of advertising, yes.
Yeah,
And the surf report, which they used to call on a payphone in the store. That's how it started, with the payphone. And I would give the surf report, which became a famous surf report at the time. I tell people to break out of jail, quit your jobs, leave school, because the ways are good now.
You put out a mandate.
That's right. And you followed it.
So the people, not just your customers, but everybody in that radio vicinity was hearing about the surf via Grog. So that's your advertising.
And my goal was to have the best surfboards on the planet. We already had O'Neill wetsuits, which at that time was ahead of Rip Curl and Body Glove. But the surfboards is the real key, and we were going through change with surfboards. We were going from the longboard to the shortboard, and I was all about the shapers. So I went from Santa Cruz all the way down to San Diego, and got every good shaper on the planet sending me boards. So the days of Nectar surfboards and Jim Oberlin's and Rock and Fig and Hank Werner and you name it, we had it in there. And so we catered to the surfboard, the hard goods is what it was all about. But in time, we realized that the girls that were coming from New York wanted to be a part of the surf thing, but there wasn't any girls' clothing at the time. There was no Roxy at that time.
No.
So I had to cater to these girls that wanted to go to this place called the Surf Club, which was this big bar in Orly Beach about a mile from my store. And every Sunday afternoon, everybody went there to party, to dance. And these girls came in the store, but I didn't have anything for them. So I would have to go up to New York City and go to these shows, these boutique shows, to find some girls' clothing that they would buy. And what happened was that started to emerge as a bigger part of the business. That the girls wanted to be there in the store because of the surfers, but
The girls like to spend money.
that's the key right there.
Yeah. So you got into finding fashion and stuff for girls in surf shops before anybody else?
Right.
You were cutting edge
Yes,
with that.
We were cutting edge with that, and that's not boasting. That's just the way it was.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
fact.
In my genes somewhere, the clothing part of me came from my mother, and I got best dressed in high school, and I didn't say I'm best dressed. I only had 5 shirts and 5 pairs of pants, but I ironed them and made myself look good. But we had New York City on our footsteps, so we would drive to New York, and I would go to the downtown in the village, and we would go to this place called the Limbo. And the Limbo was this clothing store that all the rockers, the rock and rollers that went on stage, they shopped there. Bell bottoms, buttons around the waist. So I started buying some of this stuff, and in men's clothing, and that started to take off. So, I never dressed really like a surfer. I dressed more like a
Fashion guy. You're a fashionista.
I never did. So, but we discovered other companies outside the box, sort of like what's going on in this show right now, like Verona and Genera, and there were other, and that brought a different crowd to the store. So we had the surfers, and then we had the wannabe surfers that didn't really want to surf, didn't want to wear the surf clothes. They wanted to wear the other brand. So the mix was working for me.
You like stirred the pot before anybody knew the pot was there. That's incredible.
Yeah, let's be honest. I didn't plan it. I didn't sit down with pencil and paper and say
it just happened.
It just happened.
Yeah,
It was like instinct. There was no form of it. I wasn't studying it to do that.
No.
It just happened.
It was a natural progression.
That's right, exactly. And then of course, we decided to have a contest. And,
but let's stop for a second.
Okay.
Were you involved in competitions before the idea of a contest?
I surfed in competitions, but I never really won too many. I did pretty good, but I didn't really win too many. Uh, but I saw a need for it because Cecil Lear was doing such a good job in East Coast surfing. I just saw, you know what it really was? We ended up going to Puerto Rico for 10 years, and then we went to Hawaii, 74, 76. And we met all these guys, Sean Thompson and PT and so on, and Rabbit and MR. And I put together a contract with Sean Thompson and MR to be the rep in the United States, and I would make $10 off a surfboard. So that was my connection with those guys, and then we decided to have the contest. What was the question?
The question was, what kind? Were you in the surfing competitions leading up to that?
I was, but I wasn't that great.
Okay, yeah,
I
all
wasn't
right.
that great.
So the idea to have a surf contest, was it a promotional idea or just a fascination with these legends, or growing legends? They weren't.
Let's be honest. Let's say both. It happened to be both. I mean, they became my friends because I was making money because I was selling their boards. They enjoyed being with me, and so I asked Andy Rare, can we get the contest here? He said yes, and it just so happens that the month that it was good was late June. They were getting back from the tour from France, going through New York City, and it just happened to be perfect time. Perfect time.
Yeah. How many of those events did you do?
Did about 7. They started off small. You know, $10,000 at that time was a lot of money to give away.
Yeah,
you know? And we went around town and got a lot of sponsors, a lot of money, and it was low key. I was learning on the spot.
You're still on the run. You're moving and learning all in the same thing. Yeah. Wow. I mean, like I say, I use that term. Natural progression is really at play here. You're not with a game plan.
There's no game plan. I'm sort of winging it.
Yeah. No business plan.
Business plan. That's right there.
No, this is outstanding. And how many other shops now? We're moving into mid-70s. Were there much in the way of competitors, guys, kind of opening shops?
You know, Simo didn't, who I used to work for, didn't like the fact that I was opening the store, so he opened up another store closer to me. He had 2 stores within 2 miles. One was called Tidelining. He had a skateboard park there. There was a lot of surf shops from Cape May to Long Branch, and they were all pretty good stores, you know. So it started to explode. And depending on if you lived in Philly or New York, that's where you would go to the beach. The Philadelphians went to South Jersey, and the New Yorkers came to my house. And we just started to explode, especially in the 80s. It really just blew up. But and then the South Africans came to town. Joel Cooper and Michael Thompson and Sean Thompson, and brought in their fashion. But you know, we were going through so many phases of the fashion thing, whether it was OP or it was Surfline Hawaii with all their wild prints in the 80s, the neons, and then I decided that the store wasn't big enough.
Let's grow.
500 feet was kind of big.
Let's grow.
So we grew in the length, and then we decided to make a second story. Because my theory on the second story was the surfers want to hang out in the store. It's part of what they felt good. Some of these kids were homeless, you know. Some of these kids had a broken home. They looked at surf as a place to hang out, feel like a second home to them. So I provided that as an upstairs event. Surfboards were up there, the wetsuits were there, the hard goods were upstairs. If the parents came in, they didn't see everybody hanging out. And so that part of it really worked. And giving them credit and doing that. And then we had so many brands and we had so many surfboards that we needed the space. So I built a second story, and then eventually I bought the rest of the block, and then we put the waves breaking down the street.
And that became the Surf Palace?
Yeah, and that was named by a guy named Fran Moran. When I finished the waves, the 4 or 5 waves that I put on the facade, which was very difficult to build, and most builders didn't want to do it, but we did it. Uh, Fran Moran walked in one day and he goes, "It's a surf palace." And I went, "That's it.
That's
right there. It's Grog Surf Palace." And we named it. I didn't think of it. He did.
Natural progression.
That's a progression.
Wow, wow, what a great story. You had a lot of stuff going on in the 80s as the industry just kept going and going.
Well, when you look at this show in itself, I mean, this was the engine that kept feeding the fire. So the booths alone, remember the booths were just out of control. They were like works of art, like they were going to a palace in itself. There was a lot of great brands and a lot of great artists, and it just exploded. The 80s was a healthy time for the surf industry, there's no doubt.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you made a bunch of kids that were ripping you off, living a great life, because I know the story of 2 of the people that were doing that to you, and when they told me that, I completely discounted the fact that they were decent human beings, because they were bagging all your stuff. And
yeah, we won't talk about that.
Yeah,
that's a bad negative that I don't want to particularly get into.
Yeah,
it's part of life. It's part of business.
I'm just saying this because you have so much integrity in all of this. You're a self-made guy. You didn't do bad stuff to get that way. You were just being in the moment. Natural progression. So we're going to wrap this up and just say, what does it mean to you to be in the East Coast Surfing Hall of Fame?
Well, my heroes that I looked up to meant a lot to me. So to be involved or be on the same plaque as them means a lot to me. And the fact that they recognized me for my work that I did all these years, for my passion for the sport. Even when people were saying, "You're going to surf the rest of your life," and I said, "Yeah, I think I might be doing this the rest of my life. This brings me joy." That's why I did it.
Awesome. Well,
thanks, Hunter.